everybody. Welcome to the Be That Lawyer with Fretzin podcast. We are here for your listening amusement, pleasure, and education twice a week to help you be that lawyer, confident, organized, and a skilled rainmaker. I have certain people in my life that I so enjoy, and every time we get together, I'm not saying we're like in hysterics laughing, but we always enjoy, we always have a good time. The conversation always flows very freely. We have a lot in common. And today it's Stuart and Stuart Baum. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. You set the bar too high, though, so I hope we don't disappoint.
Well, I don't think we will. The topic
I don't think
today
so either.
is such a rock star topic, and I'm going to keep it a secret for a few more minutes. But we got together 2 years ago for the podcast. I think we rocked it out back in, I don't know, October of 2022, and now we're back again. And just so much to cover because we both are working with lawyers and helping them with the marketing and business development and all that fun stuff. But I wanted to welcome you to the show. And also, I know that the last time you were on the show, your favorite quote was, experience is what you get when you didn't get what you wanted. And that was like your favorite quote. But today's topic is going to be more about like business development habits. And I wonder if there's
Yep,
a quote that you have that's more topical to what we're going to talk about today.
absolutely. I mean, my favorite quote on this is the biggest lie I tell myself is that I will remember that later.
Is that I'll remember that later. The biggest lie to
Yeah,
me is that I'll remember
and
that
I've
later. Yeah.
yeah, and I've seen like somebody put out like a tweet that was very similar to this a while ago, and I would have used it for that as well as there are two really important things I learned in life. The second one is write everything down.
I have to go back to the first because I was like in my mind, I'm putting it down as the lie I tell myself is that I'm going to do it later. And
The
that's my
biggest
teen.
lie I tell myself is I will remember that
I
later.
know, but I'm saying I'm turning it into my
Oh, okay.
teenagers, what my teenager says. He'll say,
Oh,
I'll do
okay.
it later, Dad. And I know it's not going to get done. There's going to be
Yeah,
at
it's not
least
going to
three
get
to
done.
four more times I'm going to have to get on him to get that little thing done that if he just got up and did it in the moment, right? And I'm like a do it now. That's my quote. Like, do it now. Like, just knock it out.
Yeah, and if there's anything you're going to get from this podcast on habits, it's basically that. Just knock it out. Just do
Just
it
knock it
now.
out.
Don't kick it to later because you know you're not going to do it later, and then you won't remember it anyway.
How about this?
So there you go. Good
See a
podcast,
dish, wash
everybody.
a
Thanks for
dish.
joining. See you dish, wash a
I
dish.
don't
Yep.
walk by a dish and I just leave it. I don't walk by and just say someone else will clean that. I see a dish, I wash a dish. I don't know if somebody else wants to marry me because of that, but it goes in line with what we're talking about today, which is how do we start structuring positive habits so that
Yeah.
we can get not only our job done and our work done, but like live a better life. And I don't think you can do it with a bad habit system. Um, Stuart, hey, before we dive in, because I know we're going to just knock it out and straight through, do you want to just go back and give a little bit about yourself and, president of Larger Pond Marketing and kind of how you came to be and working in legal and all that fun stuff?
Yeah, I mean, so started straight up in marketing, and so it was basically in big agency overseas, and was a creative writer, um, working on new business and helping them sell new business. And then when I moved to Chicago, I was working with a bunch of clients, and guess on marketing and sales and business development wasn't going so well for some of those clients, and I started giving them some tips on it, and one of them looked at me and said, stop giving us tips. Just do it. You're now in charge of business development. Um, and that was fun. And I was like, all right, I think I can do this. And what I think is the relevant thing for this is then I sort of looked at all the good business developers I knew in my life, lawyers and other professional service people. And I wonder, like, what are you doing right? What is working for you? And they all sort of said oh, I don't really have a plan. But when I sort of mapped out what they're doing, they were all pretty much doing all the same things. They just came at it the hard way. And I thought, well, this is easy. I'm just going to meet with people and have them sort of do the cheat code at the beginning of their career, as opposed to after 10 or 12 years. And then maybe they can get to that corner office or get to partner faster. And
Yeah,
it started to work. So
yeah,
that's basically my career in a nutshell.
yeah. And I feel like we met right when I got into
We
legal
did.
marketing. Yeah, like 2008 and 9, and you had been doing it for a while, and I was like, you were the kind of guy I was like the guru and the guy I was like
Oh, yeah,
bowing to
no,
and
no, no.
saying,
We're still
someday I
mingling.
wish I could grow up and be Stuart, but and now we're both a couple of gray-haired old dogs and whatever. So
Yeah. And I hope there are people looking at us now going, I hope they could grow up to be them. So
You know
people
what?
want to grow up to
There
be you,
are because
Steve.
there's so many people that have flooded, lawyers in particular, that have
Yeah.
flooded into the coaching market now that we are now like the old, both of like the old dogs, and they're probably saying that because they're, they're not late to the game because I think a good coach is still well needed. And the competition that we have is aren't lawyer coaches, it's lawyer apathy, which
100%. Yeah, it's lawyers not having a plan, not wanting to do it, and thinking that the phone is going to ring if they just sit there long enough. But we
yeah.
know that's not going to happen.
So, it's funny.
What's
So we had like a check-in call that we do every once in a while, and I was talking about the podcast, and I said, what do we want to talk about? Or you reached out to me and said, hey, I've got an idea to talk about, and you said
Yep.
habits, and I'm like, I mean, I'm spending so much time with my clients on habits and time management. Why that topic? Why now?
Yeah, so I was listening to a podcast, and I'll just name the podcast. It's called If Books Could Kill. And what they do is they look at the books that you get in the airport to get on the plane, and then they kind of rip them apart, both good, bad, and ugly. And their whole premise is that some of the stuff is good advice, some is not so good advice, and some is literally dangerous advice, if books could kill.
Mm.
So they did a podcast on the book Atomic Habits. And atomic habits aren't those explosive habits. They're the small little things that you need to do to be really successful in life. And it was a good conversation. It was a good podcast. And I was thinking about like, do I have those habits? Do I have good small habits um, or should I do more? And then as I was thinking about it, like finishing the drive, I was like, how much of my day spent with lawyers on business development is teaching them these small habits that are going to make them a lot more successful down the road? And it's a lot of time. And there are a number of specific habits that I just like, okay, as we get started, here are some habits that you should have. And I'm thinking this would make a good podcast because
Yeah,
you could
yeah, it
teach, they
does.
could, anyone listening could say, I'm going to steal that habit. And will you be more successful? Period. Yes.
Yeah.
You will be more successful if you get a couple good habits under your belt.
All right, let's play a quick game. You're up for a game,
Okay.
right? All right, here's the
Always up
game.
for a game. I don't know the game is, so I don't, not
No,
sure
no,
how to
you have no
score.
clue
Let me
where
know if
I'm
it's
going with
golf
this.
or
That's what makes it so
basketball.
fun. The game is called What Are the Worst Habits That We're Seeing Right Now? So let's just go through. You do one, I'll do one, and we'll see how exhausted we are after the 2 minutes of this. But what's like the habit that you're seeing, the bad habit that you're seeing that needs to be fixed and that you're working with lawyers on? Like what's coming up that you go that's got to change?
They don't follow up fast enough.
They don't follow up
Okay.
fast enough?
Don't follow up fast enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, I don't see a dish. I see a dish. I don't wash the dish. I'll wash the dish someday.
Yeah, I'll get to it later.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I would say one that I'm seeing on a regular basis is just straight up, making time for business development. Like I'm so busy
Boom.
with the billable hour. Like, how do you expect me to send emails and meet with people and all that? And so, there's habits that need to be instilled for that, and that one just keeps creeping up every day.
Yeah, I was about to say that they don't prioritize it. Okay, so I'll go to the third one then. Is they don't know who they're talking to before they start talking to them. They didn't do the prep work.
Okay. Yeah, you're not going to have a solid conversation and start off on the right foot without that. So that's kind of a bad habit.
Yeah.
Um, and I would say just, random acts of marketing. Just, oh, today I'm going to post something or just in the moment or today I'm like, there's no planning ahead. Like that's a habit of planning versus a habit of just randomness.
Yeah. I'm going to do one more.
Okay.
I don't know how long we're going to go. Maybe that's this whole
Well,
podcast here. They don't listen when other people talk.
mm,
So they're always waiting to have their say and here are my services and I'm going to give my elevator pitch next. And they miss the opportunity of really engaging.
yeah. I'm
So
gonna I'm gonna double
listen.
down on that one though
Okay.
because it's worse than that. They believe or have been led to believe that when
Mhm.
they're in an actual business development meeting with a prospective client that can engage them, that they need to
Yeah.
talk the whole time. That they need to
Yes.
sell, they need to talk, they need to convince, they need to share rates, they need to solving problems way, way ahead of things. That's a bad,
Yeah.
bad habit. I feel like they're horses I have to break, like in the old days, you had to like break a horse to get it so you could ride it. And that's how I feel like with some lawyers.
I think I spend half my time with lawyers breaking their bad habits and giving them bad, at least saying, look, that's not working for you, so stop doing it. Try something else. This might not work for you, but we know the other one isn't.
Yeah. Well, let's switch the game then
Okay.
to what are in this. We're not really going to play a game at this point. It's just going to be like I just want to hear what your top three like habit hacks are. Like what are you doing to help lawyers? And I'm happy to chime in because we're both like in the mud on this
Yeah.
to help them get better habits established.
So I'm going to use your bad habit one. and say that one of the hacks I give people all the time is go to your calendar and set 2 30-minute meetings every week with yourself to do your follow-ups and your appointment settings and
Mm,
to work on business development. Set an agenda. And again, it's this way you know that I met a couple of really great people this week and I've got to follow up and I don't have time. Well, you do have time because you've got 30 minutes on the clock tomorrow morning, whatever your time is, 8 o'clock in the morning, 9:30 when you know you're not busy, and you knock it out. And then you get it done and then you feel like that's good. And now I can get on my life.
yeah.
I think that's the key habit that when people do it, I know that when I check in with them, whether it's a week or 2 weeks or 4 weeks later, as long as they keep those times sacred, they're going to get stuff done.
Yeah. I think the problem though is keeping the time sacred because if you're
Yes.
crushed with your day and then the last thing is you see, hey, I've got a meeting with myself, then you can break that commitment to yourself much easier than you can break a commitment to someone else. Right? So that's the kind of the rub with that. And by the way, that habit, if someone can execute on it, game
Hmm.
changer because now they've got that scheduled. The hack I would hack on your hack is
Okay. Hacking my hacks. Good.
hacking your hack would be, and I've people have heard me talk about this on the show, so maybe it's old school at this point, but get an accountability buddy, get someone else that cares about business development, or a couple people, and get together with them at that same time. So you're not just showing up for you, you're showing up to work out with someone your business development muscle for that week or twice a week or whatever it is that you need to do. And that way you're going to feel that guilt of letting someone down versus letting yourself down, which people seem to have no problem with, but they should.
Yeah, I mean, so I do work on people to keep them sacred and put them at times where you're not that busy and sorry to bother your morning, but there's sometimes the morning before before the bell, the opening bell is a good time to do it. I don't want people Saturdays or Sundays. But to your point, another piece of advice I give them is similar to yours, is find an internal co-hunter and
Mm-hmm.
work with them, set a half-hour meeting with them and say, okay, the two of us are going to work together. It might be deals. It might be just best practices. It might be a, hey, do you know? Or what should we work on together? But really have that half hour or that hour every couple weeks where Steve and Stuart get together and go, all right, we're basically going to, I call it co-hunting session.
Yep.
The good thing is there are a lot of, I've got some clients that should be your clients, especially in legal. I mean, cross-selling is easy when you talk about it with somebody else that has a complementary service. And
Yeah.
then you sit there and think, who else should my client meet that would help them? And who else could I refer to my client that would be helpful to my client? And if I'm working with you, you're like, I might not know somebody, but Steve might go, oh, you know what? They should meet this person. That would be really helpful to their business. Now I've got two gold coins
Mm,
because you gave me one.
yeah. And I think the other thing that we need to add to this, and maybe you can put some color around it, is that it takes time to develop habits. You can't just put something in your calendar day
Yeah.
one and it's a habit, right? That's the beginning of something.
Yeah, I mean, so there's a term called habit stacking, which is something I really like. And the Atomic Habit book talks about this, but we all do it, right? We all know that if we want to floss our teeth, we put the floss right by the toothbrush because we're going to brush our teeth every morning and every evening, and then we'll see it and we'll do it. We put the medicine by breakfast or whatever it
Mm-hmm.
is that we
Mm-hmm.
sort of put one or two. So, and that means that when you do that one thing that you know you're going to do, you then do the next thing.
Yeah. That's
Um,
great.
and then that habit stack, and there's a bunch of examples of habit stacking, which is like if I set a meeting with Steve and I'm going to meet with him and say, hey, let's get together in this. I'm going to like know that as soon as I set that meeting, the next thing I should do is take a look at his LinkedIn bio. What has changed? Look at his regular bio. What has changed? Take a look at what was our last meeting. And because I wrote it down, right? I can
Yep.
go, this is what we talked about in the last meeting. Oh, crud, I didn't do the thing I was supposed to do because I wasn't that great at it. But this I'm refreshed and I come in and go, okay, hey, let's talk about this. I got a couple things to talk about with you. And we're going to talk a little bit later if we get to it about telling stories, not services, because
Yeah.
that's also a good habit.
So let's keep going. What's another
Yeah.
solution to poor habits that you are working on every day?
What do you mean poor hacks?
Like, no, poor habits that people, that
Oh,
lawyers have that you're helping them with.
and it's that they don't really bullet out what they want to do. So they don't really have a game plan. And so one of the things I say a lot, I basically have this, have your eight promoters, know who your eight promoters are. Write down the list of the 8 people that you can help and that can help you and keep them close. Have, quarterly lunches with them.
Yeah.
Um, and then sit down with them every time. And if they're the type of people that care about your career and you care about their career and you're sort of staying on top of things, that's usually a really good lunch for you because they'll refer you to people and you'll refer them to people, but also you'll solve problems together.
Yeah.
And
And
that's
to
why I
bet
do a
and
lot. I actually make the clients write down the 8 people, and then how can you help them? And if you can't, let them know.
well, and I think there's also some planning involved in that, in the sense
Yeah.
of I'm meeting with you. I know that you want to work with certain types of attorneys or
Yes.
certain types of people, and I'm making a list of who I can connect you with before we even meet, right? Or I'm going through
Yes.
your LinkedIn to look at contacts that you know that I might want to know so that I'm prepared to help you help me. Because if you're really a promoter, you don't have a problem with me doing that. And I would do it, and I've done it for you, or I would do it for you. So, I mean, there's a mutual, you know, sense of giving and helping with those promoters that you're not going to get with everybody.
Yeah, and you can't make 1,000 people happy. You can't be that supportive to 1,000 people. So one of the stories I tell a lot is, when you go to Vegas and you put a dollar on the slot machine and it comes up bars across, you walk away from it because the odds of it coming bars across again is very, it's not going to happen for like
Hmm.
another 1,000 quarters. But if you and I meet and it's bars across and we help each other out, like I'm going to go back and say, okay, let's work together and we can help each other some more. So the people that are your promoters are going to be bars across a lot. And
Yeah.
so I think that's a mistake people make is that they think that in order to be successful, they need to add hundreds more people to their network. And they really should be better to the very few people in their network where they can be the most helpful to, that then can be supportive to them.
Yeah. Is there a habit that you teach people around follow up? You mentioned earlier that follow up is a big problem. They're just getting buried in their day, and then to go back and follow up with people they've met or stay in touch. How do you help them do that?
Well, so they're in that 30 minutes that you have every twice a week.
Ah, the old 30 minutes.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's like, and again, I've seen people do 10 minutes. I've seen people struggle to keep them sacred. Um, and again, it also comes down to the write it down. Like if you and I have lunch, I'm going to leave that lunch and say, okay, what did I promise to Steve? And I'm going to get on my phone. I'm going to type out, I promised him this. And I have this habit of texting things to myself.
Hmm,
So I'll
that's
text it to
great.
myself. And then I'll have that, when you look at your text, you'll see that one and know that there's a thing I have to do. And then I won't to your wash it, see a dishwasher dish. I won't allow myself to undo that one until I do it.
Hmm,
And while I might have a lot of unread emails, the thing that gets me crazy is having unanswered texts,
hmm.
even if it's from myself. So I'm kind of
Yeah.
gaming myself.
I never think about it, but I never have unanswered texts. That's for some
Yeah,
reason, that's for me, that's automatic. Get a text and but with emails, right, there's all different levels and all different
yeah.
variances of importance. And text for some reason, they're all important? Not really, but I guess that's just a mental thing.
I don't know. When you look at your phone, it tells you how many unread emails you have, and some of the times it's a big number, but unread texts, it's a manageable number, and it feels like you can knock that out.
Yeah. What are we doing to help lawyers with better email habits? So I'm at a zero inbox every day, and that's a getting things done.
I want to be you when I do
It's
that.
I mean, I've been a getting things done David Allen student and teacher for I don't know 18 years. And I don't know that I would sleep well if I had unanswered emails. So getting to a zero inbox, it is a thing. I'm doing it. I'm getting my clients to do it, but there's habits that have to be that have to be set up for that.
Well, that is definitely a trick that you have and you can coach that I probably can't coach. And maybe this is a
I can
little
coach
bit
the
of,
coach.
yeah, you can coach the coach, or maybe this is a little bit of a do you eat all your own dog food? And so
Yeah.
that would be dog food.
I,
That would be dog food of
I,
mine that I
I,
would not eat because I can't promise a zero inbox at the end of the
well, I'm
day.
not going to promise it for the
I mean,
lawyers. I can promise it for
to
myself. I
myself.
can't promise it
Yeah.
to the lawyers. But here's the thing: you've got 500 unopened emails. You or your assistant or a combination have to go
Mhm.
through, and you've got to put them into categories of priority. Get it done now. something that's going to take some time and you've got to, put thought into it, and that you've got to defer those and schedule time for those. And then there's a bunch of trash. Um, and you got to just work that down and work it down over a period of whatever, a couple weeks until you get to the zero inbox. Then once you get there, you can't go back. You have to either have scheduled time during the day, morning, afternoon, evening, to go through emails to make sure that you, and I'm also a big proponent of, and I don't do this fully, but to have an assistant or have someone that you trust go through your emails and get rid of the ones or respond to the ones as you for the basic ones. Hey, Stuart, I want to meet with you. And you say, sure.
Yeah.
And they're setting that up. I don't have to touch it. It's just you end up in my calendar. Right. So there's things like that that I think get trapped, and obviously the very important client ones, need to be handled with kid gloves.
Yeah, no, I think that's great advice. It's a great habit to have. It's not one I have, but I think, and again, when I talk to people about habits, they all look at me and they say the same thing. Not all habits work for all people. And so
Yeah.
I think the caveat to all of this stuff is not all of this is going to work for all people, but some of it will work for you. So pick the things that work for you and do it. So
Yeah.
I can't promise a zero inbox to myself. But I can certainly promise that I set up time where I will do follow-ups every single week. So, you
Yeah.
will get a follow-up, you will get an email. And one of my tricks is when you offer people times, offer them 2 times, not a laundry list of times, because 2 times is they'll pick one or the other, they're in their calendar and you got to hit. If you offer them 15, that feels like work. So
Right.
again, little hack, not quite
Yeah.
a habit.
And I'm a huge auto scheduler fan, like person. So I talked to someone recently
Yeah.
who is not a fan of it. She's like, "Oh, you're giving me work to do. By giving me your calendar, you're giving me work to do." And I'm just going to put this out there. I've been doing this now for a few years. We're talking about thousands and thousands of
Yeah.
auto scheduling links that I've sent out. On one hand, I can tell you how many times I've gotten pushback on that. And I just find that there's nothing more efficient for my day and for the person that I'm trying to schedule time with, because they can just go in and within a minute figure out the time, click a button, put their email in, and it's done. And we're done with it. We can move on with our lives. I think some of it, Stuart, is the language.
Yeah.
You have to say something like, I know how busy we both are. To avoid the back and forth that happens with scheduling, here's my auto scheduler to help facilitate this. If you want to do something more direct, we can certainly do that as well. So
Yeah.
that way you're kind of covering your bases.
Yeah. I mean, I used to be somebody that didn't like when people sent me those auto schedulers. And now I become someone who loves when people send those to me
Yeah.
because I can, one and done,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
One and
Just lock
done.
it down.
So again, I don't use that. I'm like sitting there like, I don't do anything apparently. I don't use that, but I appreciate when people do.
Yeah.
And so
But
it's
just
a, it's
look,
a
if we're
good, it's a
trying to,
good
if
hack.
part of habits is saving time, I mean, why are we setting up
Yes.
habits, right? Because we want to
Hmm.
save, we want to do things more efficiently, and we want to achieve. And it's very hard to do that without having a serious, you cannot lose weight if you don't have discipline and habits about eating or working
Yeah.
out. Like it just doesn't happen, right? Unless you got a certain metabolism or something like that. But with business development in lawyers, if you don't have positive habits, I think you're really in a pickle.
It's funny that you mentioned the working out because I will ask my clients, do you have a workout schedule that you adhere to every single week, like a religion? And
Hmm.
if they say yes, I'm like, we're going to do really well together. And they're like, why? I said, because I'm in shape. It's like, well, you'll have more energy. And yes, because we do know that good workout habits give you more energy. But also it's like you prioritize the things that are important. So if I can get in your head and say this business development is important, then I know I'm going to get my 30-minute meetings and they're going to keep them sacred. And they'll
Yeah,
know that if it gets pushed for some reason, business travel or a call from, managing partner that says you got to work on this thing now, that they'll then set it for later because they're going to feel bad to themselves at the end of the day. If they don't have that, then I'm going to have to work on the habit of keeping their habits,
yeah. The habit of keeping habits,
the
everybody.
habit of keeping habits.
Um, so let's go back for a moment to something else that was brought up, 15 minutes ago, and that was about lawyers, the habit of talking too much, talking through meetings and
Yes.
dominating the conversation. talk about that, why it's a problem, and what you're talking to lawyers about to help them break that bad habit.
So I've also run sales teams, and we know that the best attributes a salesperson can have is two ears. And it's the expression is listen the sale, don't talk the sale.
Mm.
And that you're not learning anything when you are talking, or when your mouth is you're not learning anything. Um, and it is a hard habit to break. And I will, throw lawyers a little under the bus here because they're kind of the worst at this. And I know it's like,
How
that's it.
dare you?
Every lawyer's like, click, podcast is over. But
We
they
just lost
are.
our entire listenership. Thanks a lot.
Oh well, good on them. They'll come back for your next one. But and so it's and this is why it's like one of the things I think I teed this up at the earlier is tell stories, not services. So you don't want something comes up, we do these 14 things, and let me list all these 14 things and all
Yeah.
that. Have these little stories, and we'll get to the habit of getting those stories in a few minutes. But have these little stories, and before you meet somebody, think, what stories can I tell that person today? What problem did I solve that might be interesting to this person? That is a short story, and I always when I work with my lawyer and coach lawyers is like keep it about 120 seconds, under 2 minutes for that story. Don't tell more than two or three stories. Now you're talking about 6 to 8 minutes of your hour lunch or your half hour drink or whatever.
Hmm.
And that's okay. And people will remember the stories. They're not going to remember the 30 services that you listed out with all the sub bullets and other people working on it. They'll remember that interesting way that you fix something or that you help somebody or you turn something around or just, I don't know, the passion behind the stories.
Yeah.
And 2 months from now, when they see something else, they're like, Steve told this story that seems to fit here or close enough that, hey, Steve, I remember the story I told. They're not going to listen to your hundreds of services or remember one of them. They're
Yeah.
not. Because bluntly, all lawyers do exactly the same thing in everybody's mind until they have a problem.
Well, it sounds like that. I don't know if it's Simon Sinek that was like, start with why. Like, people want
Love
to
that
hear
guy.
why. You're right. He's
Yeah,
amazing. Like, why you
yeah.
do something, not all the things you do. So talk about, what got you into it, why you're passionate about it, what motivates you, and people are going to remember that much more than a bunch of services for sure.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that does motivate a lot of people, lawyers especially, and here's where I'll get our listeners back. Lawyers really like to help people. They really like to solve problems and put that person on a higher stair or in a better, more secure place. So, and here's a habit is when you're talking to a client and they ask you for some counsel and you give them counsel, instead of saying, great, that was good, I'll go log my billable hours or free advice because it was as a friend, put the phone down, take a second and write down what was the issue, what was your solution, and a couple bullets on that. And that becomes the story. And if you have, 10 or 12 of those at the end of the month, first of all, what an amazing blog that would be for you,
Yeah.
for anybody. And also then you can look through those and say, okay, which are these stories that I think will resonate with Steve if I'm meeting him in a couple of weeks and say, Steve, this interesting thing happened. And you're like, oh, you're solving problems for clients and you're excited about it. And that kind of is the why, because that's showing the why as opposed to telling the why.
Yeah.
So
I
again,
love
back
that.
to the write it down, folks.
Yeah, so critical. And I'll be in a networking meeting or like running a networking session with a bunch of people and
Yeah.
no one has any pen and paper. And I go, you guys are going to remember all this? And
Oh,
you guys are going to, how are you going to think of a name and keep a name for that you're thinking about for someone else when we go back to the, from the small group to the main group or whatever it might be. And they all kind of looked at me like, oh shit, he's right. Like, I'm not going to remember that.
how many times, Steve, have you been coaching somebody and they say, oh, I went to this event and I met these two great people and they didn't remember their names?
Yeah. Ouch.
Yeah.
Well,
Or what they even talked about. "Oh, I think we talked about
yeah.
it's like if you just took 2 seconds to type it in your phone before you talk to the next person or
Yeah.
while you got a drink or just say, I'm gonna sit over here for a second and do a text, you will
Right.
remember it forever.
Right. The other thing I'm in this habit is generated, through me and through my program, I'll just share it briefly, is,
Mhm.
I'm teaching sales free selling. And in sales free
Love
selling, in
it.
that
Yeah.
methodology, it doesn't allow for pitching, convincing, and solving. Those are not parts of what I teach. It's relationship building, it's questioning, it's qualifying, it's empathy and understanding. So in a
Love it.
meeting like that, you're learning all you can learn, you're qualifying that everybody's a good fit, and you're getting all the details of what you should present before you actually present. So it's like a proper diagnosis before prescription, right? And so it ends up being that Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule, because you're really only talking 80 or 20% of the time,
Yeah.
and it's asking questions, it's clarifying that what you heard, it's some and maybe it's peppering in a story or something. That's okay. But ultimately, those are habits that I think are hard to build unless you study business development and what the top coaches like you and I and others are doing, because otherwise you just don't know that you shouldn't go in and just charge in with solving and showing how smart you are and talking through the whole thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Again, listen to sale, right? I mean, the smartest person in the room is the one that listens the most.
Yeah.
Because if I'm telling my issues to you and you ask, tell me a little more, and how did that work out for you? Or what did you try to do? Or that type of stuff. I'm like, this is a really smart guy. And what you're really doing is just prompting me to tell you more, tell you more, tell you more. And then when that happens, I'm like, okay, he seems to understand. Now, Steve, what do you think I should do here? It's like, all right, well, let me tell you a story. Because somebody else had something similar, and this is how I help them. Don't know if it's going to work for you. And you're like, okay, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
But right, if I come in and start giving you, a white paper in 15 minutes
Yeah.
about the solution to it, you're just like, well, that's not for me. And I'm bored and I'm thinking about, what I've got to buy on the way home for dinner, all the dishes that are piling up in my sink because I didn't just do the dishes that day.
Right.
We're going to talk
I,
about dishes the whole
no, I
time.
mean, that's a part two. Everybody's going to be the dishes conversation. We're going to talk
Yeah.
about dishes, but we are going to wrap up on that point, not the dish point, but on just the general concept of, look, habits aren't easy to
No.
create and sustain. However, when you get a good one and you do sustain it, wow, what a game changer in your life and your career. So, take heed. And I think atomic habits, getting things done, coaching, accountability. But I mean, so many takeaways from today. And then the game changing podcast you mentioned, if books can kill,
If
if
books
books
could
could
kill, yeah.
kill, we talked about that earlier. If people want to get in touch with you, Stuart, they want to hear more about larger pond marketing. What are the best ways for them to reach you?
They can send me an email at stuart@largerpond.com or go to my LinkedIn profile, Stuart Baum, and just message me.
Awesome, awesome.
Yeah.
And we'll wrap up thanking our sponsors, the podcast Law Her, which if you're a woman looking to get ahead as a lawyer, that's the podcast you want to listen to in addition to this one. And of course, Rankings.io, working with, agents or agency working with law firms all over the world to help develop marketing and get those leads in the door and lock them up. Um, Awesome, Stuart. Thanks so much, man. I'm glad we're able to get back together and talk about habits and share combined wisdom with my audience today, man. I appreciate you.
Yeah, no, it was fun, and I appreciate the conversation, and I'm gonna take a look at my inbox and feel a little bit sad, but I'm also somebody that when I do a dish, see a dish, I do a dish. Like there is no dishes in the sink ever, so at least I
Well,
have that habit.
no. So look, we're all works in progress, right? We're all trying to
Oh
get
my.
better. So there's no stopping that. Thank you, Stuart, and thank you everybody for hanging out with us today on the Be That Lawyer with Fretzin podcast. We are here for you to be that lawyer, confident, organized, and a skilled rainmaker. Take care, everybody. Be safe, be well. We will talk again very soon.